Okay, good morning. Good morning, Sarah. First time we're meeting. Kind of unbelievable, but she's been a student of Lou Nordstrom since 2001, and I've been one since 2000, but we never met. Does that
Crazy
seem?
how that happens.
It probably says a lot about us and Lou at the same time.
Probably.
Yeah. So this morning we've got the Illusory Elephant in Ben Conley's Vasubandhu's Three Natures. Um, so I enjoyed the chapter a lot, and what came up for me, just as a brief aside, if you haven't seen the movie with Edward Norton called The Illusionist, it came out about 10 years ago maybe. He plays a magician in 19th century Vienna, and it's quite entertaining. But it deals with the whole abracadabra illusionist type thing, and Ben mentions that in the Buddha's time there was a lot of that going on. And he hints at the question of, well, what is real in the discussion about perception and different scientists' investigation of perception. So I was going to introduce Bodhi, but he's sleeping so peacefully. I think I'll wait till the end of the session before I do that. It's better to just kind of let sleeping dogs lie, you know. So anyway, I've been kind of, over the weekend, I got him Saturday, I've been kind of just being a bit of a bliss ninny and just kind of basking in the preciousness of life. And I remember Kwang Roshi's saying, Zen is the aliveness you bring to each moment. So rather than thinking about what's real or how to explain how come we don't know what's real, I've just been kind of trying not to be too much of a bliss ninny about it, but enjoying the joy of self-inquiry is there, and receiving the compassion and that ever-presence that is the preciousness of life, the aliveness we bring to each moment. So something from Thai, because we're studying Thai every other week. In his book, No Death, No Fear, he says, reality as it is called suchness. Suchness means it is like that, or you could say like this. You cannot describe it in terms of thoughts, especially thoughts of birth and death, being and non-being, coming and going. No word, no idea, no thought can describe reality, the reality of a table, the reality of a flower, the reality of a house, the reality of a living being. And Ben, in his book, he does mention of one of Reb Anderson's more difficult books. This it's a hard time reading. San Dimokana Sutra, which was one of Reb's really difficult books to understand. But one thing I remembered from that book was he said that, to build on what Thai said, is that things aren't what we think they are. Not only are they not what we think they are, they're free of what we think they are. So the absence of what we think about things is the way they really are. And so when someone asks me, what do you remember about that book? I remember that. And also, there was long discussions about how our descriptions of reality are just a series of imputations. That was in that book too, that Ben mentions in the chapter here. So I guess one challenge is, how do we, because our actual experience is the real test of reality, how do we address the question of what is real that makes us feel that depth of aliveness, that depth of being, that depth of presence. Even depth is like an attempt to label what can't be labeled. But from what I read of Reb and Tai there, it's just reality is not perceivable or describable, but it's fully alive. So we say, don't grasp, don't turn away, be present. And nothing ever happens outside our consciousness, our awareness. That's our actual experience. So if there's reality, it's here, it's now. And that's why Tai says, we already have everything we need to be happy right now, in the present, here and now, the ever-present, timeless, here and now. So, one discussion I read, and I was studying this just this week, last week, is a conversation that the spiritual master Nisargadatta had with a student, where he talks about the actual and the remembered. And the actual is the real, here now. So he says to the student, enjoyment is a state of mind. It comes and goes. Its very impermanence makes it perceivable. The fact that we can experience the coming and going is the perception. You cannot be conscious of what does not change. So reality is not what we think it is. It's free of what we think about it. And we can't get our mind around it, and we can't be conscious of it as a state of mind, as an object of mind. All consciousness is consciousness of change, impermanence. So this is dualistic consciousness, is consciousness of change. But the very perception of change, does it not necessitate a changeless background? So teachers will say, like Rupert Spira, you can't have a cloud without a sky. You can't have a movie without the screen. And we had a discussion a couple weeks ago about existence. And I think Tom pointed out that the Latin root of existence is existeria, which means to stand out, to stand apart from. So reality, our true nature, being free of what we think about it, and not being perceivable or describable, but the aliveness we bring to each moment. We can begin by contemplating deeply to realize that we're too close to it. It pervades us too intimately for us to perceive it or describe it. But there's a saying in the Jewel Mirror Samadhi. It is me, but I'm not it. Our thinking mind, or our identity of confinement of a personal self, it is pervaded by reality. But our idea of ourself is not limited, or our idea of ourself doesn't limit the ultimate nature. Buddha nature, the wholeness that we intrinsically are. So that's a bit of a segue from this discussion, but the discussion is just starting, so let's continue here. Okay, so he says, the very perception of change, does it not necessitate a changeless background? And the student says, the memory of the last state compared to the actuality of the present state gives the experience of change. And Maharaj Nisargadatta says, between the remembered and the actual, or let's substitute the real, there is a basic difference which can be observed from moment to moment. At no point of time is the actual the remembered. Between the two, there is a difference in kind, not merely in intensity. The real is unmistakably so. By no effort or will of imagination can you interchange the two. Now, what is it that gives this unique quality to the real? And the student, pretty bright student actually, the real is real, the actual is real, while there's a good deal of uncertainty about the remembered. And Maharaj says, quite so, but why? And then he continues, Nisargadatta continues, a moment back, the remembered was real. In a moment, the real will be the remembered. What makes the real unique? Obviously, it is your sense of being present. In memory and anticipation, there is a clear feeling that they are mental states under observation, while in the real, the feeling is primarily of being present and aware. And the monk says, yes, I can see it is awareness that makes the difference between the real and the remembered. One thinks of the past or future, but one is present in the now. So the changeless background is just an attempt to try and label something that can't be labeled. But we can get an intuitive sense that there is a thingless thing, made of stuffless stuff that is present every moment of our life. We can't find any edge to our awareness, boundary to awareness, to our being. Nothing has ever happened outside of our being. We've never had the experience of being, beginning, or ending. And because this presence has been with us our whole life, it is the most intimate of any experience we could have. And one of the main qualities, we could talk forever about that, but I should wrap up here, is that our being is shared. The main qualities of our essential being is that it's shared. So as teachers say, many teachers say that self-realization is about sharing. It is about a conversation, being willing to look deeply into our experience. So we can do that now. Thanks.
Thank you, Roger. Welcome, Sarah. I quite enjoyed the chapter too, and I think for me, when it talks about the limitation of language, that I keep getting bogged down, like there are no births or death, this emptiness, and coming to understand, yes, there is a shared thing with all of us. Like, we're all breathing the same air right now. We couldn't exist without the earth. And so, really grasping this idea of our shared being, but also just in terms of the real application, the imagine, the dependent, the complete. It's so easy for me to imagine that this person is doing this, or this is happening, or the world is falling apart, all the stories we tell ourselves. And then to be able to be steady and still with the realities that we're here. The earth is resilient, we're resilient. So, yeah, I really, really enjoyed reading this chapter this week. So, thank you.
Thanks, Claudette.
Welcome, Sarah. Nice to sit with you again. I think we met many, many, many years ago at a little event, so lovely to have you. And thank you, Roger, for a beautiful talk, and Claudette. I had some wonderful insights just from your prompts over the weekend. And the whole chapter, it reminds me of, something I think that's attributed to Suzuki Roshi. If you say so, then so. If you say not so, then not so. I always thought that was just a wonderful approach. And we use it, Aiden and I use that a lot. If you say so, then so. If you say not so, then not so. And this whole manifestation of the shared hallucination that Ben talks about, I still am just perplexed. In fact, if I think about it, this is the history of my interest in culture, is how everybody can be having the same shared hallucination at the same time and passing it along. I think he says, he quotes Anil Seth, the neuroscientist, perception and hallucination have a lot in common. You could say that we're all hallucinating all of the time. And when we agree about our hallucinations, that's what we call reality. What? What? Yeah, I mean, how is this happening? How is this happening? And there are, I can't even begin to say how complex this is in terms of the study of culture, and why it's important, because it replicates itself, and now I feel like we get a little bit of witnessing of how culture rapidly replicates itself through what's happening with AI and these telescoping evolutions that capture all of human consciousness in a lot of ways. They're becoming smarter and smarter and smarter, and they are starting to look like they're their own thing. But they began with artificiality, illusory constructions. They're parrots. Parrots are running the world, or could be very soon. How is this not real? I still, and we're all involved in this. Ben talks about how the magic, the abracadabra is fun because we sign up for this. We go to see the magician who makes the Statue of Liberty disappear and the elephant and all this. And we still get stuck in this, what? So I think that for me is what I take away. I love how Ben always comes back to just taking care of what is present right now. And I'm looking forward to the chapter. He kind of, foreshadows a little bit about how Yogacara is comparable to modern ideas of trauma, which have everything, as I understand it, to do with whether or not you're present. Sometimes you just, the nervous system just dissociates because we cannot comprehend the present. It's so horrific or overwhelming or whatever it might be, and then so because we're not there, we keep going back to it and back to it and back to it. And I think that's just really interesting, how he, even though this is like a big topic, he says what he learned from studying PTSD was that when these apparitions arise, you take care of them in the now. Take care of the emotions that are invisible. So the apparitions might be visible, but interestingly, the emotions that lift them and support them and ultimately, I think he suggests, heals them are not visible. So it's taking care of what is invisible in this moment. Just like, going to see the magician, we sign up for this, and that's fun, but frightening hallucinations are not fun. And either way, just to take care of them, I think is wonderful, and just to think about all the implications of what this is saying about our current state of the world. Mind-boggling and wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, it's beautiful, Deborah. Thanks so much. What came up for me in what you were saying is, if we're willing to fully and deeply feel the what, we can, realize, well, yeah, it's not perceivable or describable. And so the what is inevitable, and it's our aliveness. It's like, and it's sort of like being patient with the what, is like being patient with relative reality, which can warm us up to being patient with the ultimate that isn't perceivable or describable. Because we more and more we realize on a deeper level that that's the case. It's not perceivable or describable. And so how could there not be all this with impermanence? How could there not be all this wonder and awe? And, I was watching just a little bit of news this morning, and I was saying the way our the frontiers of our culture expansion, space travel and things like that, it's like it's going to be impossible to disentangle ourselves from SpaceX. And then I turned it off at that point and said, well, maybe AI is our only hope then, that it won't be Musk, it'll be something from the ultimate dimension. I don't know. But yeah, it's fascinating, all the different things, the possibilities. And I'm interested to see how the chapter addresses the relationship of trauma and what is real. And taking care, it's like that aliveness, that preciousness of life takes care of all the trauma if we're open to it. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to speak. The whole thing with mind and reality, what Deb brought up, and Roger trying to explain these things. I'll sit alone at night and get scared that I'm not really here, and that none of us are really here. We're just these quanta floating around. And I think with mental illness, a lot of people have this fear of some kind, that they're not there in reality. And that's what I think people like R.D. Laing and Baba Ramdas, Richard Alpert, and all of them realize with their experience with LSD and stuff. And how do you get over that fear? With me, and if you'll allow me to speak about my own experience, I have had psychotic ideations where I thought my family was space Nazis, famous people were following me around, and all kinds of stuff that wasn't reality, but was my own reality for about 9 months or so. And then I've had these horrible where I want to kill myself and I'm not there, and these catatonic, like frozen, horrible states where I've had to have ECT, electroshock. And all of this is a product of my mind that that in the past I couldn't control, but Zen makes me realize that this is a mass hallucination of some kind, and that we all do share that others are there going through all these things. And that is so important to a person, that they're a part of things and that they're loved and nurtured and cared for. And that is what is healing. And this group has helped me with that. And recently I've had the honor of being with Jeb at Kashi Ashram, that was beautiful, and with Sarah in Richmond. And I am grateful and thankful for those experiences. Thank you.
Thanks, Donna. Beautiful.
Can I ask a question? This idea or this reality of this mass delusion that we all have in society, and how AI is affecting it, and I try to think of the roots of mass delusion that we all live in, and it obviously served a purpose. It serves a purpose. I think that maybe as humans, through time, it was necessary for survival, that we were all sort of on the same page, that we all relied on each other and were connected in some way. And I think about that and how it continues today, and how we're ever closer but ever more separate with technology. And technology, where you see zombies, we're on our phones constantly and we're not connecting in reality. So this sort of false connection that we all have is almost getting deeper rooted. And I think sometimes that, if we could all find a place of present connection, would we survive as a species? Would we be able to do all the things in this world we've created for ourselves and simply survive? If reality, if breathing the present was our current state. I don't know. And I don't know the answer to that. I'm just kind of throwing it out to the wind. It's something I think about a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Well, all these teachers we're quoting will say, they'll have teachings specifically on you're not the body. So whether we will survive as separate body minds in the present hallucination that we're in, um, given our experience and the depth of studying of impermanences, the answer is no. We're not going to survive, and we're going to be something else, but who knows what we'll be, but we're not going to be this.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about.
Actually, is that something to worry about? I don't know. I think maybe that might be okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to interject, this idea that it is okay that things die. Everything has a natural bell curve. I don't know if you've all seen that. It's like a little evolutionary joke, but it starts with like our ancient, pre-human ancestors that are walking on fours, and then they gradually stand up, and at the top of the bell curve we have, Homo sapiens standing up. Some might say 1950 whatever, MAGA, we're great. Okay, and then there's a decline in the natural bell curve, and that's the wave of the impermanence of existence that all cultures pass, all human beings, a life cycle from a baby, to 40 to, you're hunched over again. And this impermanence of the wave, I so hear what you said, Donna, about the fear that I am not real. But what if that's okay? The passing, I think, is okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Roger, for your talk. I always love watching Zen masters and teachers do presentations because the ones I've always been fascinated with, and you are one of those, are the ones that kind of get lost in what they're saying. And they kind of start to drift off. They close their eyes. They become anandamai. They go into a silent cocoon in some way with that. And I think that draw, again, there are many thinkers and authors who have said that that's the inevitability of what we do. We're drawn back to our true nature. We're drawn back to the absolute. And I think that's why we keep talking, right? I've always been amazed at Zen discussion because there's always an effort, to engage in words, point at the moon, and at some point it becomes funny, right? And in many ways, because we just keep replicating. we just keep replicating the concepts and the ideas and the notions, and we just keep putting it out there. But that's the beauty of Zen, I think, and I think it's the beauty for me of Advaita Vedanta and some other spiritual traditions too, in terms of being really able to distill things down to the basic building blocks. Zen has been referred to as the giant wrecking ball. And I think it's not a wrecking ball for purpose and destruction, because I think we get lost in the words, right? And we start attaching emotions to the words, and we start worrying about the loss of this and the loneliness of this and the separation of this, and we start to attach emotions to our thoughts, and basically, what happens, I think, this is the wrecking ball, in motion as I start to do this, is that I wake up in the morning, like we all do, or in the middle of the night, and we start thinking. The machine kind of starts clicking away, and what comes through the window, let's pay attention to that quanta particle, right? Let's pay attention to that, and let's make a story about it. We're going to go there, and now we're going to talk about the end of the world as we know it, or the end of love, or the end of compassion. And my God, we're like Shakespeare on steroids. We just can't stop. You know, it's. I think, is it Ben who says it? Just stop. You know, one of the Zen thinkers was just stop, stop, shut up. You know, stop the machine. You know, let it fall back, let it all go away. It's all there. You didn't need the writings, you didn't need the teachings, you didn't need the Zen masters. Of course, we do, because I think those are the people and those are the thoughts and other people's shared being, I think, that pushes us, you know, that, or gives us the insight in terms of being able to grab onto something and to find some peace. But I think it's all leading back to trying to find our true nature, the purpose of Zen. And so why? You know, what is I think finding our true nature is shutting up, you know, is stopping, is listening to ourselves, listening to our true nature with that. And I think we've always done it. I find cultures that were to be absolutely fascinating too. And I'm curious in terms of where he's going to go with the trauma issue with it too. I have a supposition where he's going to go, because he's a Zen practitioner. He's going to lead us back to true nature, and within that true nature, you know, that's the launching pad, right? I mean, that's Thich Nhat Hanh, you know, saying operating out of your true nature. You still got to act, right? I mean, he makes that point, I think, in this chapter, you know, and I think at one point he said it, and none of these officers ever say that that there isn't reality, right? I mean, it's not like there isn't something really going on out there or in here with that. But it all starts with me as the screen. I am the screen. You know, you're the screen. You know, we all are the screen, and we're just reflecting the shit out of everything that comes by, you know, all the time, and making sense of it, and making up the stories, you know, that are our shared existence, and what we have done and what we have not done for each other along the way. And I think it's with that recognition, because it is, you know, when Roger closes his eyes and drifts back into his true nature, that is, I think, what we are all drawn to in terms of that. What do we go back into? And I think what we go back into is perfect, brilliant stillness. And I think it's that noble silence, it's that perfect, brilliant stillness, you know, that is the launching pad of love and of compassion, and a recognition of our clear shared being with that. And it'll, you know, however it comes out, I'm not going to control it, right? I mean, I can't control it. I'm not the doer. You know, there's nothing there inside the doer. I'm going to live my life, and I'm going to get involved with, you know, whatever groups trying to change and trying to be more compassionate towards others with that. But I'm trying to get away from worry because I think what is inside is peace and caring. And I think operating with that awareness that the wrecking ball just keeps going, and that window is open, and that door keeps swinging with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just like to say that what Tom just said reminds me of a Bob Newhart. It's on YouTube, where he plays a psychologist, and this woman is going on and on and on with her mishigas, her whole story, and he just says, "Shut up, stop." You know, he just yells, "Stop." And it's a very funny bit.
That's funny.
And I think that's what Tom, you know, I just took away. Stop, Donna.
that's interesting. I always thought my parents didn't have any sense of humor, but now I remember they bought a Bob Newhart record when I was in my early teens, and they were playing it. Hey, there's Mrs. Khrushchev running alongside the car. That's not right, or something. Anyway, so they did have a sense of humor. But and just along those lines of the what, it's like somebody sent me a cartoon a couple days ago where the kid's in bed and his dad has told him a story and is getting ready to leave, and he goes, "Dad, maybe I've had enough of the koans. Could you just tell me normal stories? Because the koans keep me up all night." So I thought that was pretty good.
Audrey, do you have a message for us before we
Yeah,
continue?
you mentioned Ananda Mahima, so I'll read a little part. We can all become Ananda Mahima together in the meditation session after. She says, love of oneself naturally extends into serving and loving others through single-minded devotion, deep inquiry that arises. Though forms change endlessly, the essence remains the same everywhere. Every answer is partial, but beyond confines of intellect. There is no cause for despair. With purity, unflinching faith, and burning eagerness, not to try to get something, for you can't attain presence, which you always already are. Appreciate your presence as the ultimate. No need to grasp or turn away, because you can't. Whatever comes, let it come. Whatever goes, let it go. What is left is the real, not describable or perceivable, but fully alive. Then you will inevitably realize your true self. Try to remember that whatever is perceived in any way, at any time, is a manifestation of the Supreme Being.